Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 247. Today it's just me and Mike, and yes, when it's me and Mike, sometimes aprons and pencils come up. And it seems to be a popular subject somehow, probably because the listeners of Shop Talk Live are just our kind of geeks. Before we get started, I have a legitimate favor to ask of you. I'm going on vacation, and it would be great if I could assemble a best of episode to fill in the gap. I don't want it to be my favorite segments. I want it to be your favorite segments. So I need to hear from you what your favorite discussions and segments have been throughout the years. So send me an email, shoptalk@taunton.com, and tell me with an episode number, please, what your favorite bits of Shop Talk Live have been throughout the many years that we've done it. And as a way of saying thank you, if you send me your address, and if you get that in by Wednesday, August 18th, I will send you a Fine Woodworking sticker and a Shop Talk Live sticker, because you're helping me out. Also, please be on the lookout in your feeds. On the 20th, we are going to have a special episode. It's an interview, and it's a little different for us, and I hope you enjoy it. So, enough about that. On with the show. We have a bunch of questions. We'll get through as many as we can. I don't know if this will be a quick fire, but we'll quickish fire.
All right.
Something like that.
Okay.
But this first one from Scott is heavy. Mike, with your skills of making furniture, what made you decide to not pursue being a full-time woodworker?
Yeah, that's rough. I was talking to Rachel this morning over coffee. I said, one of the questions was that. And it was just like, how deep do you want to go with that question?
How many dreams do you want to shatter?
Obviously, I mean, when I was studying furniture making in college, that was the goal, right? Why would you study furniture making and not envision yourself as a furniture maker?
See, I always thought that now, when you were studying furniture making, were you already working as a graphic designer?
I was working as a draftsman all through college. Yep. Okay. So the warring ideas when I was in college was furniture making first, and then later I got into drawing and painting, and then sort of simultaneously started getting involved in a band. And so when it came time to begin my master's course in furniture making, the band kind of said, why don't you put that off to the side for a minute? So so kind of through my later 20s, I was more involved in music and apartment hopping. So my furniture making machinery was sort of stashed in my parents' garage. So do you still want this? Did you ever think about selling it? It's like, no, Mom, it's leave it there. We're good.
And that was the planer and joiner you currently have.
Yeah.
Right?
Planer, joiner, bandsaw, table saw. Yeah. So the table saw you have and the 14-inch bandsaw went somewhere else. So yeah. And then, the writing was on the wall with the band, and I decided to go back to school for computer graphics to get a real job. And from there, that sort of led to a unusual skill set at the time, because this was pre-internet, blogs, website design, all this kind of stuff, where Read and Find Woodworking magazine, and they were looking for an associate art director with both woodworking and computer graphics skills. And at that time, that was like, there's one, that's me. I got the job, and it wasn't that big of a deal because I was like the only person who could do that. So then, coming to Fine Woodworking, I think even then the idea was this vague sense of, I'm doing this vicariously to get better at woodworking and to advance my woodworking career, whatever that meant. So, and then this comes down to sort of the first question. So we moved out, and the idea is that when my son went to kindergarten, my wife, who was an elementary school teacher and had been staying at home, it'd be cool. It's like, hey, you can get a job teaching elementary school, and our kid is there. And now it's the magic spouse with bennies. That is like the key, I think, to making it go as, in any type of freelance work. And just before that realized itself, we found out we were expecting our second kid, our daughter, Anna. So, okay.
And deeper you went.
Yes. So, that turned into, I've been at Fine Working for 25 years now. And, I would say that it's not necessarily, and even then, I've done commission work for, 25 or 30 years, and always the idea that it was always a situation, and this is pretty common. If you have a full-time job, it's pretty easy to get more commission work than you have time for, but that is not enough to replace the salary you're making from your day job. So, it's always that balance. But it sort of struck me a few years back that I don't know if I want to do the old 70 hours a week in my shop to keep the lights on kind of a thing. I know that's sort of the aspiration and the validation when it comes to, well, you're not a real furniture maker unless you're doing it full time. Somehow there's that little stamp of approval for that. But, as I mentioned in my first book, like the first chapter was getting the most out of your shop time. And I had mentioned that I know a lot of professional guys who spend a lot of time doing things to pay the bills and still have as much trouble getting to the projects they want to be doing as I do being in my shop part-time. So for me, the equation is if doing furniture making full-time means that you're doing more of what you want, I'm not sure that's necessarily like a one-to-one correlation. Yeah. And I also found out that I really like a lot of aspects of working for a magazine and teaching, not just writing, but also, all of our authors, they're outside authors. They're my heroes. They're legends of the craft, my sort of vicarious mentors, throughout the years. But the idea that a lot of my job is documenting someone's life work who has really dedicated their life to this craft, someone like Chris Bexford and Garrett Hack, these guys, Michael Fortune, Steve Latta, people who've devoted their lives to the craft. And it's not just about conveying their wisdom and information, but it's also shining a light on their efforts and pursuits and what it means to dedicate your life to the craft. So I think that's a tremendously powerful thing. I think even if I quote unquote quit my day job, I think that's still documenting the work of woodworkers is great, and also documenting my own work. A commission piece, it's a one-on-one relationship with the client, which is very intimate, really powerful, really important. But that piece goes into someone's house and no one else ever sees it. It's like one person is benefiting from that. You can teach a class to 12 people, and in a sense, it's sort of doing a commission piece with 12 people, and you're able to kind of spread that knowledge and information. And they're not just ending up with a piece, they're also hopefully ending up with some more information in order to be able to further their woodworking careers. And writing for the magazine is reaching hundreds of thousands of people at a time. So it's all this sort of economy of scale, I guess. So I guess I found out that I liked all of those things, and I like the combination of all the things that I'm doing now. And everything is everything I do, from writing articles to teaching. At its core, it's dependent on me being in the shop making something I want to make. Yeah. And so that, which I think is at the very heart of, hey, why don't you do this full time? And it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of cool, because even though a lot of what I do takes me away from being in the shop, it still is so dependent on me just chasing a wacky idea by myself, not worrying about if anybody else is going to like it. And then that sort of begins to feed the beast. So for me, I think everybody has to find out a way to make it work for them. There are, I think, a very small handful of people who are successful doing it full time, and making beautiful work in the way they want to work. I don't want to say that's not possible, but I think for most woodworkers, it's a lot of our authors who are fantastic furniture makers, like the top of the craft of our generation, are still writing articles. They might be writing books. They're probably teaching at various places. There's a lot of ways to sort of make that work for you. And I think that's, so for me, my particular, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I might want to mix up the ratios of how I'm spending my days. Ideally, maybe in the future, I could see that progressing to maybe less, salary and more non-salary work to make up for that. But at the moment, I like everything about it.
Yeah, I think that most people that we know, there's two things that they have a partner who is helping support and bring in health insurance. And not all, but most. And the other thing is they don't just woodwork. Yeah. They might be teaching. They might, like you said, there's all of these other, like look at Philip Morley. That's somebody who right now is like as close to the it guy as you can find in the woodworking sphere. And he's got this cool thing where it's like commission work, partnerships with these like, stereo console brands or whatever.
Right.
And then going to like I just saw he was at Florida School of Woodwork.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. It is, and I guarantee you Philip is spending more than 40 hours a week in the shop.
Yeah.
And spending a fair amount of time doing non-shop things for his woodworking enterprise.
Yeah. So Philip is me without a day job.
Yeah.
Where you're still filling up that time. It's not any
easier. There's still a spreadsheet to look at every now and then or something,
Yeah. And even James Kredoff, who obviously is one of my idol of all idols, and obviously he spent the early part of his career making a living making woodworking, but at the same time, I would probably say the majority of his income after a certain point came from his writings and his teaching at College of the Redwoods for a number of years, which maybe meant that somehow he wasn't making as much furniture as he could be, but it did afford him to make whatever he wanted to make. And I think a lot of his creativity and cool stuff that came out was probably due to the fact that he was earning the majority of his living probably from teaching. So, and this is one thing that made me kind of validate where I was at and feel good about it, is a very respected woodworker, frequent writer of the magazine we all know. I won't mention his name, but he made a comment to one of the editors and said, well, if I didn't have all this commission work to do, I'd be making furniture that Pekovich was making, so it was like,
making what he wanted to make. I think that,
So I think the question is, do you want to make is it such a thing that where I love woodworking so much, I just want to make my living doing this because I don't want to do anything else? I get that.
Yeah. Well, and you've been able to ride your personal wave well, where, you've got the 40-hour week salary position, but then you make furniture you want to make.
Yeah.
And in doing so, found a voice, found your thing.
Yeah.
And probably if you didn't have the day job, you'd probably be, churning out cutting boards like everyone, like all the other pro woodworkers to fill those gaps,
Or Shaker and Arts and Crafts furniture.
Yeah, or whatever. But the day job has afforded you the ability to do whatever you wanted to do.
Right. Garrett Hack always said, if someone says, hey, how do I make a career in woodworking? And Garrett said, do you enjoy woodworking? If the answer is yes, don't become a pro. But this coming from Garrett, who is quite happy and satisfied in his lifestyle as a professional furniture maker.
But he is the 0.0001% of talented woodworkers. I remember hearing Tim Rousseau say woodworking is a horrible way of making a living, but a great way of making a life.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to most of the people that we know don't live in huge houses. They don't, it's, when we do the 10 questions videos, one of my favorite questions is, what percentage of woodwork in your house is made from you? And most of the pros are going, I can't afford anything I make. And it's true. You go in their house, it's like, oh, I've got that same IKEA chair, man. That's right on, It's indicative of, they set the lifestyle and ahead of the living, so.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like setting up a shop. It's a really tough barrier. None of us has a perfect shop. We all find a way to do it. It's sort of like if you love woodworking, you're going to figure out your own path, whatever that means. And you're going to find a way to find time to get into the shop and make stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But there is always something to be said for, being afforded the ability to do what you want and not what you have to do in the shop.
Yeah. A former student a long time ago, he was like brilliant, like a chemical engineer-ish, but smarter than that, super successful. Taking class with me, and he showed me some pictures of these little wooden dog bowl stands. It's like, I just want to make these. And I want to know how much can I sell these for at the flea market, like in order to like earn my income. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, really? That's what you want to be doing, which is totally cool. On the other hand, it's like, man, you got a good day job.
Yeah.
You are afforded the opportunity to not worry about selling what you're making. But for a lot of us, that notion of the minute you set up a shop and make something, you want to sell it or make something to sell.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's guilty of that. There's I've been recently trying to, and this was partially going to be my recommendation at the end. I've been trying to follow more local people. So I've been like actually, going to my hometown tag or whatever in Instagram and following local woodworkers. Eventually, maybe just like starting a little club or something. I don't know. But I like being local these days. And there's this local woodworker. It's a husband and wife couple, and they posted a video, and they're making a heck of a go at it.
Yeah.
They posted a video the other day, and it was just stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. I mean, 200 cutting board, pizza peel things or whatever at the router table, pattern routing. And it was just like, this is the reality that people don't necessarily come to terms with. It's like, no, they're going to do it. And here they were like, they're doing what it takes. They're making the things that sell.
Yeah. And it's about efficiencies and price points and margins and overhead. And you're competing against CNCs.
Yes.
And, just the fact you can go into whatever, Walmart or Target and buy like a wooden kitchen stool for $30 or $40. Yeah. And for someone to say, can you make me a wooden kitchen stool? It's like, I'll give you a good deal, $800.
Yeah. I know. I was just thinking like, it can't be less than $500,
yes,
unless I'm making a mess of them.
Yeah. And even that I'm not horrendously enthusiastic about.
No. All right. So let's see. This next question is from Steve. I was listening to episode 211, which has got to be one of the most popular episodes. Because we get mentioned all the time.
Wow.
These very things. And I'm convinced I need a fancy apron and a Blackwing 602 in my life. During the episode, Mike mentioned that he's trying out new ideas for apron pocket configurations. He has also mentioned he was trying 3 different pencil sharpeners for his 602 pencil. Since it's been about a year since those comments, does Mike have any updates? Was there a winning pencil sharpener? Does he like his apron pockets? And I'd like to point out, I was the one who started with the apron, and I was the one who started with the Blackwing 602, but nope, it's all Mike these days.
Yeah, I don't think it's...
It's not a competition. So your apron pockets.
Yeah, so I had an apron by a company that was like pretty cool, but the pockets weren't quite right. And I called them up and I just said, look, is there any way you can do some custom pockets for me? And they said, no, we don't do custom stuff like that. So I called up Texas Heritage and sort of figured out what I wanted. The good thing about the old apron that wasn't perfect is I kind of knew what I wanted in a general term. So Texas Heritage, they made one up to my specs, and I think it's probably 90% there. And the thing I thought about is that, like a shop, there's no such thing as a perfect apron, because like some people say I have no pockets on my apron. Other people say I've got the kitchen sink in my apron, and I'm probably maybe closer to the kitchen sink in that I have upper pockets. I've got my dovetail strength reading glasses, a marking knife, a 6-inch rule, an assortment of pencils and pens and grease pencils, and a 4-inch rule. And then down below, I had them add sort of a second layer of pockets. So there I have a scraper, and I have those little setup gauges, setup blocks.
Oh, yeah.
They look like a stick of gum, but they're in various thicknesses for
the
machine
infinity
setups.
Ones, the long
the
ones.
Infinity, yeah. I've got safety glasses. I got my pencil sharpener. I have a 4-inch combination square and my tape measure. So when I'm out of school and I'm setting up and I'm running around and I'm like 500 feet away from my tool chest at a machine, I've got what I need to do. The only thing I would like different is that those little setup gauge, the blocks, they're all in one pocket and they rattle around. And it would be cool to have separate individual pockets for each one of those. That'd be super nice.
Wait, so which ones do you carry? Because there's like 7 or something that come in a set.
There is. So I do like the 16th, 8-inch, 3/32 quarter. All those. Because from those guys, you've got, what is that? I mean, pretty close to like a 1/2 inch total if you need it. So yeah, it's all the skinny ones.
That's interesting. I actually set my 3/32 in a drawer. I made a little holder for mine, and the 3/32's in a drawer because I thought I would get it confused.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That's a really good number, though. It's like right in between the 16th and 8th.
Yeah.
And then you can add that to other things and get 5/32.
Or 7/32.
Or 7/32. So
all the 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Wow. So you keep those in your apron. And now, how much of this though is dictated on you wanting to have the muscle memory for, I'm looking for this and I'm not in my shop all of a sudden? Like because when you're teaching,
yeah,
like you want to stack the odds in your favor. So do you think that you would have all of that in your apron if you were only working in your shop?
I don't know, but because that's what I have in my apron, that's what's always in my apron. And I use all of that stuff. So you're right. If I was only in my shop, I may not even have an apron, because I think I started getting an apron just to, because I was teaching and I kept forgetting my combination square across the room.
Yeah, I really went nutso with the apron when I was working in the fine woodworking shop.
Yeah, that was a big shop.
Yeah, it was a big shop, and all of a sudden I'd be like, I am 50 feet away from a pencil, Yeah. I have found now that I don't lean on the apron so much, just because I have everything laid out exactly where it is. But I do get into phases where, like right now, my I've been doing a lot of glue ups, so the apron goes on for glue ups. just because my t-shirt budget has been spent. You know, I just too much glue on t-shirts.
Yeah.
But I always have like that Veritas precision square, that little, like it looks like a little framing square. That seems to live in my apron now, to the point where if I'm not wearing my apron, I don't even look for it on the rack anymore. I look for my apron to go get the Veritas square. And there's always a couple pencils in there, but I don't use it as much now. For a short while, I thought about getting, I have a lab coat from my old days as a recording engineer that I used to wear a lab coat every now and then to be like weird. So I thought about wearing the lab coat just for glue ups and whatever, and having the pocket or the sleeve pockets, like for pencils, like you see on chef's coats.
Yes.
And then there's this guy, Shane, in Australia, who's a refinisher who I follow on Instagram. And he just went out and bought like a chef's coat and with the sleeve pockets. And sleeve pockets seem like so useful to me. But then also, Tom wrote in and he said that he uses 5-pocket medical scrub shirts in his shop because they stay cool in his unair conditioned shop.
Huh.
And so now I'm starting to think, ooh, maybe a medical scrub shirt. I don't know. It's kind of wacky enough to be cool too. So
that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I keep on my apron is I had some little D-rings added to the apron for my little dust collector on-off switch.
Oh, yeah.
So it just hangs from there. And I just got tired of taking it off every time I went to teach. So it's always hanging on there. But when I'm in my own shop, and if I bang it against a bench or something inadvertently and it turns my dust collector on, it's like, oh, shoot. So now when I'm teaching, I was teaching at Mark Adams, and like when the dust collector went on across the room, I thought, oh, shoot, I just hit my little thing and I had to look down. That was pretty funny.
Nothing will ever top. Apparently, remember when Matt Kenny's truck remote would turn on Tim Rousseau's dust collector?
Yes.
That's the best.
Yes.
All right. So the second part of the question, pencil sharpeners.
Yeah.
I remembered this 3 pencil sharpener discussion as well. And I've been meaning to ask you. Yeah.
And I was kind of really hoping a really expensive pencil sharpener would be like the coolest. Turns out you and I both use the same pencil sharpener. It's manufactured by Cum, K-U-M, but it's also sold under both Palomino brand and also Blackwing, if you want to pay a little bit more. I've seen it online for anywhere from about $5 to $25, and I think it's the same thing.
It is, because, I have both the Blackwing here and the Cum. I got this at an art supply store that does not sell Blackwing things.
Right.
Because like some art supply stores are into the Blackwing dealership and some aren't. If your art supply store does sell Blackwings, they only sell the Blackwing version for $20.
Oh, okay.
If they do not sell Blackwings, they seem to have the Cum version for $6, I think.
Yeah.
But so the markings are all identical.
So what it is, I mean, it's sort of a kind of almost a long oval shaped device. Really, it's just, there's kind of a standard looking 2-blade pencil sharpener in there. It's a 2-stage pencil sharpener. Some pencil sharpeners with 2 holes are just for fat pencils and skinny.
Yeah.
This one, each hole has a different function. The first one you put it in, and it I can show you. I don't know if you can see that here or not.
For the audio only podcast listeners, Mike is sharpening a pencil right in front of the camera. He's twisting the pencil into the first hole.
You can see it. So it removes the wood around the lead and leaves about 3/8 of an inch of lead sticking out. And then
lead, and the lead is just lead.
And then you put it in the second stage, and it sharpens that to a
perfect,
super nice long point. So what I like about it is it makes it sharp. I actually had other pencil sharpeners that gave me like a sharper tip, but they tend to break off. What I like about it is it's a long point, meaning the angle of the sharpening, it's a long taper, which kind of keeps you sharper longer because the lead stays narrower for more of its length before you sharpen, if that makes sense, as opposed to like
gives you more usable,
like a miniature golf pencil, which is sharpened at a 45-degree angle sort of a thing. So I like it. The other thing is that it contains the little shavings, which in a wood shop you think is not a big deal. Just put it on the floor. I do like the fact that the shavings are self-contained. And also when you flip open the cover, inside is housed an extra pair of blades. How cool is that?
Have you ever changed yours?
No, but if you bang the thing really hard when you're emptying the shavings, the blades will fall out in the trash. So
I have two in my shop, two of the same thing, one black wing, because I didn't know that there was a cheaper version. I keep one on this side of the shop where my work setup is, and I keep one over on my bench because I live a life of luxury.
Yeah.
It's super convenient to always have one. If I was smart and wore my apron all the time, I'd keep it in the apron pocket. But.
Yeah. So before the apron, I just had number 2 Ticonderogas sharpened all over the shop.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, oh, here's one. Oh, here's one. And they were always sharp because you would only use them periodically. When I had the apron and was using the same pencil more often, I realized, I got to sharpen this more often. And it wasn't going to work if I had to go over to the wall pencil sharpener every time I had to sharpen. So that's when I started looking for the little portable guy. And it's been my go-to for probably a good 6 months now. So I like that.
Nice.
And also the black wings I'm using, black wings aren't rated by number in terms of hardness. They're rated by color. And I use the clear cedar black wings because that is the hardest, even though it's still a relatively soft. It's about like a kind of like a number 2 pencil. But
so I have here, just to show off, I have a Blackwing matte given to me by Michael Cullen.
Oh.
I don't know if I'll ever use it. And then I have a Palomino, but most of mine are, I just use 602s, and I have about 2 or 3 lying around the shop. And I also have about 32 regular number 2 pencils, and I will actually go to reach for a pencil, and there will be 3 number 2 regular ones, and I'll start looking around for the Blackwing. I don't know why. It's just... There's something about it.
And then Ticonderoga pencils are not created equal. They're made of different core woods, and you really want the cedar. And so you want to look for Ticonderogas that are made in Mexico with cedar. Yeah.
This just took a turn, really.
No, I know. Because some of the other ones, like the 24 packs in the clear box, like at Staples or something, it's got a really white wood, but it's like really fuzzy, and it's just not the same, and it not as crisp when you sharpen it. So so you want the cedar Ticonderoga pencils made in Mexico. Just look for that. Yep.
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's do one more before the break. From Matthew. Right? Yes, from Matthew. I've heard you all talk about the lifespan of your bandsaw and table saw blades. I am in awe of the lifespan you get. Granted, I'm using big box store blades, but I'm curious if you could give helpful tips to us amateurs on how to prolong the lifespan of our saw blades. So, I was curious about this because I don't remember anyone talking about lifespan of anything other than bandsaw blades.
Yeah, so the career arc of the lifespan of a bandsaw blade goes like this. Lasts forever, to change it really frequently, to last forever. And so what that means is that when you first get a bandsaw and put a blade in, it kind of stays in for like a really, really long time.
Oh, yeah.
And then as you start to use your bandsaw for more, you're asking it to do more. You tend to then start to change your blades more frequently. You start to buy multiple blades at a time. And the minute they stop doing what you want to do, you put a fresh blade on. And then once you move up to like big bandsaws with carbide teeth, then that blade is on there for a long time again. So that's sort of the arc of the bandsaw
And you're
blade.
usually only using that bandsaw and blade for one thing.
Yes. Oh, that's just my resaw. So
Yes.
it's blah, blah, blah. It's like, I hate you, but I envy you at the same time. So I would say, bandsaw blades, unless you have like single-use bandsaws set up with carbide teeth blades, I would say just change your blades more often. I think that's good. Also, it doesn't necessarily pay to get a carbide blade on a smaller bandsaw because the smaller wheel diameter will stress out the metal backing, and it will tend to break the blade before the carbide teeth wear out. So I think, probably below, I don't know. So I'm not sure, maybe 18-inch bandsaw. I think then you might want to start to invest in more expensive blades. But
I remember Tim Rousseau talking about, like, his theory was that the heat dissipates better over a longer length of the blade, and that, with a 14-inch bandsaw, it's like the blade is still hot by the time it comes back around. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tim's smarter than me. I just believe everything he says.
Yeah.
So
table saw blades, carbide teeth last a while. They, people say clean them, and that helps because...
Do you ever clean your blades?
Not as often as I should.
Do you ever clean your blades?
I've cleaned my blades. So there, it's not so much that the carbide necessarily dulls in use. It's just that the pitch that is on the blade will break down the bond, which basically glues the carbide pieces in place, and it'll actually fracture off. So you should clean it. Also, the more pitch on there, the more heat buildup you're going to get. You're going to get more burn cuts and stuff. And I think that probably shortens the life of the blade as well. I did have a student. I won't mention his name, Sean. You know who you are. When I first started working with Sean, he had a saw stop. Everything in his shop was like just really well thought, good quality stuff. He really took everything seriously. But he would buy 3 packs of cheap saw blades because at that time he was a little stressed out about the idea of having to like readjust the brake cartridge in the saw stop. So it's like, well, if I just put a fresh blade on there all the time and I never have to change it, I'm good. However, that idea of you can buy an expensive saw blade and get a bunch of sharpenings and it'll last you a really, really long time. The other thing is that a fairly inexpensive carbide tip saw blade is still going to cut really well when it's new. It may not have enough carbide to get a lot of sharpenings out of it, but if you buy a $40 blade and it works well, instead of sharpening it and you just put another $40 blade on there, by the time you get 3 $40 blades life worth out of them, you're still cheaper than a Forest Woodworking 2 blade at about $150. So, and you get saw blades resharpened. I don't know. To me, even though I sharpen saw blades, they never seem to be exactly as sharp as when they were fresh out of the box.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Maybe, out of some stress, they go out of flat a little bit. There's a little bit of run out. I don't know what the deal is, but I mean, I do sharpen my blades and I have, fairly good quality. I have Forest blades and Ridge carbide blades, along with some other ones as well that I do resharpen when necessary. But sometimes you put a brand new blade on there. It's like, ooh, this cuts really well. So that notion of, find a cheap blade you like and just stick another new one on there and save the old one for rough stuff or whatever. And it's not a horrible way to go.
I have, right now on my saw, I've got, I think, a $40 Freud or something that I got at a box store. And when I was starting this project, I've just got like miles of plywood to cut. I was like, I should really start with a fresh blade or like a sharp blade. And I called or I emailed the local-ish sharpening place. And I was like, what's the turnaround? You know, if I got you a blade today, what's the turnaround? They're like, probably about a week. I was like, so I was like, maybe I'll just go buy another cheap blade. And then I thought, you haven't cleaned that blade ever. So let's just see. And I cleaned it, and it was like, oh yeah, this is what a newer blade feels like, or a newish blade. So like, yeah, clean. And there's an argument. Bob Miller wrote a blog for us one time that, again, this comes back to like heat and friction and blah, 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 that if you go longer in between cleaning your blade, that pitch builds up, and that means more heat on your blade, more heat on the carbide. It's going to dull faster. So it's like, his argument was just get in the habit of cleaning your blade like once a month or whatever, depending on how much you use it. But just stop and clean the blade. And that'll save you sharpenings. I still desperately need to send a bunch of blades to go get sharpened. And in regards to bandsaw blades, I buy them 3 at a time now.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. I don't think any one of us gets a long time out of our bandsaw blades.
No. Not if you're resawing, not if you're cutting joinery, not if you're asking it to do really precise work.
Yeah.
Resawing especially. You know, if you're resawing and that blade starts to wander or do a little S back and forth, it's like all of a sudden you're sacrificing a lot of lumber thickness
and time at the planer and all, you know, so.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break.
I know.
There's a reason why Pony Jorgensen is tight with woodworkers. Their clamps are made using only the highest quality of materials, and they inspect each one to guarantee consistency and performance. That's what they mean when they say clamps without compromise. Head on over to ponyjorgensen.com to explore their wide range of pipe clamp fixtures, bar clamps, hand clamps, and more. And join their woodworking community on Instagram by following them at pony_Jorgensen. I want to let everyone know about our next webinar, August 19th. Big one. Michael Fortune's favorite bandsaw, jigs, and fixtures. I've been going over it with Michael. This one's a baller. Yes, bandsaw, jigs, and fixtures can be baller. Sign up. Findwoodworking.com/webinars. Smooth move.
Okay.
This one was smooth. Especially because I was just so pleased with myself and thought I was
a bad sign.
I was like, man, I am working at a different level than I've ever worked before.
Right.
Like everything was just going great. I'm in the middle of making 15 drawers, and I came up with a setup, like a table saw setup that like, do this, do this, do this. Everything's just dialed. I'm like, wow, I am smart. And, some of the drawers, 4 of the drawers are 30 inches wide.
These are the Baltic birch drawers you've been making? What is this for?
This is for, I've been, it's kind of under wraps, but I've been,
I know, that's why I asked.
I've been hired to design a toolbox for a company.
Oh, cool.
And so I have to make 2 of them. I need to make a prototype and then make the one so I get to keep one, which is nice. And then I get one, and then one gets shipped out to them. And they gave me very, very specific dimensions. Like they wanted to be able to fit 30-inch wide things in one of them. And I was like, this is absurdly large for a toolbox. So then it turned into a 30-inch wide toolbox with 2 narrower toolboxes that stack on top.
Oh, cool.
And kind of with that Gerstner Kennedy chest mindset of like stacking boxes. And so the 30-inch wide boxes have been a challenge. But I'm going through, and it's in order to get as much depth out of each drawer, the drawer bottom is just set into a rabbet, glued and brad nailed in. and glued all the way around the perimeter. I was going to do it into a groove, but that gives, this buys me another 1/4 of an inch of depth.
Yeah. And it's not moving.
No, it's not moving. It's all plywood. It's one unit by the time it's done. So I run the rabbet on an endless number of pieces for 15 drawers. And on the 30-inch drawers, I run them, normal. And I assemble the drawers, and I am just tickled pink. I mean, my joinery is perfect. And then I cut my drawer bottoms, and I fit them perfectly. Length, width, everything is just to a T. Within... Yeah.
Your ears pop when you set it into the rabbet. Yes.
Yeah. I bet you know where this is going. Do you?
I'm fearing a couple different things, but
okay.
Go on.
Well, I go to set my drawer bottom in the 30-inch drawers, and they're not quite fitting in. And it was like, So I take my piece, it fits widthwise. I take my piece, it fits lengthwise. This should be perfect. This piece is square. Well, my rabbet on the 30-inch wide, or on the 30-inch wide drawer faces and backs, I didn't get consistent pressure when I was doing the rabbet.
Yeah.
So my rabbet depth is in the middle. There's a middle 12 inches in each one of these that is just off by a solid 1/8 of an inch.
Wow.
And I distinctly remember at the time thinking, you should do a second run over the blade on these. It's all set up. You should do this again. Didn't do it. And now the drawer is glued together.
Yeah.
Can't do it. So I have enough plywood to get by. Maybe not if I remake these drawers. Then I got to do the setup again. Just a nightmare.
So it's just basically in the center of the boards. The corners are pretty much full depth?
Corners are full depth. It's just the center of the board. The rabbet is just wonky. But I wound up just taking my marking gauge, setting it, referencing off the front of the face, scored a line, took my rabbet plane from my grandfather and just went to town on it. And,
awesome.
It was one of those, I was thinking about router table setups. I was, all sorts of different ways around it. And it really was one of those, grab a hand plane, man, and just go. And I was done in 10 minutes. I did it during work hours. I took pictures of it, so I'll make a blog post. It's just, that was one of those, wow, I can't believe you did this, but I worked my way out of it, and that's that. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, a good smooth move has like a moral to the story and a happy ending. So
yes,
this is both.
Yeah.
The worst smooth move is like Anissa, where it's just like depressing. Like it's a smooth move, and she leaves you hanging just with that. So thank you, Ben, for getting me out of this hole.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but it really was one of those. I can't believe I didn't take that second pass.
Yeah.
They're narrow. They're 1.5 inches wide, or 1 3/4 inches. So I didn't, and I don't have 2 feather boards. Right. I should have set a feather board up, going pressure down, and then to the side of the fence too, just because I was batching out so many. That's where a feather board pushing into the fence really comes in handy.
Yeah.
And, but I thought, I'm not going to have room for a push stick if I do that.
Definitely the downward pressure is probably good because, a longer sheet of plywood is probably going to have a bow in it somewhere. So that's just going to have, but the multiple passes, good wide, push paddles to really keep the pressure down.
Yeah.
Yeah. That second pass solves a lot of problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know how many times you do that second pass and you hear a little ring and you're like, ooh, I'm glad I did that.
That is satisfying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, all right. Do you have anything for this week?
Yeah. So for my favorite all-time tool I bought at the swap meet of the week of all time is I found 3 C-clamps with the little whale tail handles.
Mm-hmm.
Those are nice.
The whale tail handle is once you go whale tail, you have a hard time going back.
No. And it's like, and stupid Bob Van Dyke got me hooked on really nice old clamps because he has them in his shop. And it's just, he says, and this is completely true, the threads on the older clamps, it's just a little bit of pressure and it holds tight and back. And then the whale tails, you don't have that little sliding bar that you clamp something to your crosscut sled fence and then you go and that little bar hanging down hits. So then you have to tighten it more than you want. Anyway, yeah, beautiful clamps. And it's like, of course, the person I was buying this from, he had tons of stuff and I showed him these. He goes, oh, now these are old clamps. It's like
yes, I know.
Cool. Good to know. And he says, and he was like, and I had 3, of course. He goes, yeah, I usually get $10 each for those clamps. And you're kind of waiting for but for 3 you can. And he kind of paused and I was kind of waiting. And I knew in his head, it's just like, yeah, but these are really worth $10 a clamp. And I was like, yeah, these are really worth 10. So none of us said anything.
Sucker.
We both paused and I just pulled out $30 and said, here you go. He goes, thanks. And it was understood. It's like, no, yeah, swap meet or no swap meet, these clamps are super cool. So
it's gotten to the point where my son makes fun of me at the flea market. I start lagging behind and he goes, oh, Dad found clamps. And because it's honestly the only thing I buy at the flea market. And it's gotten to the point where I have stopped. But there was one time I made the mistake of wearing like a woodworking shirt. I think I was wearing a Lost Art Press shirt.
Okay.
And so like the guy was able to identify, oh, this guy's a woodworker and he wants this clamp. But I found, okay. So that was back when I was accruing my mass of wooden hand screws. And I generally pay $5 for a wooden hand screw.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the guy wanted like $20 for it. I was like, I'll give you 10. And he goes, and he pointed at my shirt. He goes, you know what they're worth. And I was like, oh no, I have a moment here. And I leaned into it. I said, yeah, I do. And he goes, fine, 10.
Wow.
Because I buy them for 5 to 10. That's what I pay for. But it was like that, like, oh no, I wore a woodworking shirt and oh no. Now I have a tell.
You kind of bullied him with the Lost Art Press shirt. That's wow. Okay.
I know. Should have been like, I know Chris Schwartz.
Yeah.
All right. Question from Scott. I often see woodworkers mark their joinery with a marking gauge line, leaving a visible line in the finished piece. I do not like the look of that line. How do I get rid of that marking gauge line? If you plane it away, oftentimes the joint won't fit. So.
Just figure out a way to not put it there in the first place. And really, it's like where, in a lot of cases, unless you make your joinery intentionally stick out and be visible, like a lot of my work, chances are the only place you're ever really going to see a marking gauge line, maybe a dovetail case if it isn't covered by moldings or it's not like half blind dovetails, so you don't see the dovetail ends. Usually like on like drawer sides, you'll see that.
Yeah.
And it is somewhat common for someone to say, oh, really nice, but why do you have that line on there? And I, of course, don't mind it being there. I think it's sort of, it's a result of the way it was made. And so I take pride in a really clean marking gauge line. If it's like super crisp, if there's no tear out, if it's not a double line, if it's not inconsistent in its depth so that it's like hit and miss.
Yeah.
So I like that solid thing.
That's funny. I've never thought about that being a tell of, struggle or something.
Yeah.
But you can see in a marking line when A, the gauge is sharp, and B, it is done with intention. So
Right.
yeah.
On the other hand, if you don't like them, you can get around it. I think it was a blanket chest that Andrew Hunter made for us, and he was doing some like preliminary layout with a pencil. And I thought, why are you laying out the shoulder line with the pencil? And that was just temporary. So he'd lay out the shoulder line with the pencil, I think on the pins board or possibly the tails board. And then, laid out the joint walls and then came back with a marking gauge, I believe, or possibly a marking knife and scribe just at the location of the voids, whether it was the pin sockets or it was the tail sockets.
Wow.
So it's a 2-step layout, but so he was super intentional about it. And so he came up with a good way to do it.
Wow. I've never thought about, okay. So he's getting, because you can certainly work without a marking gauge line, but in something like dovetails,
where you're chopping, you need a reference there.
Yeah, that gives you a positive stop, an actual place to put your chisel for that last pair, right? Or chop. So to just put the lines, just put the marking line where you need it. Wow, that's kind of Andrew Hunter level there.
Yeah, and then figure out an efficient way to get that done.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, and then also like if you're doing drawer sides, if there's like true hand cut dovetails on a drawer side, sometimes there's a scribe line, sometimes they're not. And it typically has to do with, do you set your marking gauge line so the pins are slightly proud to the sides and you plane them flush? Mm-hmm. Or do you size your drawer front exactly the way you want and then cut your dovetails so that the sides are slightly proud of the pins and you're planing the drawer side down to the pin so you're not altering the side-to-side fit of the drawer, in which case you're planing off your scribe line. So,
and I know people who do that for that reason.
Yeah.
That seems like it would be more conducive to adding error into your drawer fitting, don't you think?
Well, I mean, one is the idea is that I'm going to size my drawer front exactly to my opening, and I don't want to make that narrower through the cleaning up of the dovetail process. So I'm intentionally going to make the sides stick out a little bit and plane them down, which sounds like a lot more work. Yeah, well, I'm hand planing a lot of work down. It doesn't have to be that much. I size my drawer fronts for super snug fit side to side. Like I want to just be able to wedge them in place, but still have them tight. If they don't fit into the case, you're doing too much hand planing to get them fit afterwards. And if there's perfectly fit, they're going to be too skinny. And then I just set my marking gauge exactly to the thickness of my drawer side stock. The idea being that the pins are either going to be slightly proud or slightly recessed, depending on how that dovetailing job went. And by the time I plane everything flush, chances are I'm going to have a really good fit, or ideally slightly tight of perfect, and then you can bring it on down. Mm-hmm. The worst is to get it all flushed up and you put it in and you got just that little side to side rattle. It's like, oh, I overshot it. Shoot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So we haven't mentioned blue tape.
Yeah.
So that's a way around it. I have struggled with in the past using blue tape in order to not leave the line.
Huh.
But going too deep. I think so. I did it last time I used blue tape. It was for through mortises a la Pekovic.
Yeah.
On those speakers I made. And I think, do you do the thing where you mark out the width of your mortises and then just do the lines through the blue tape?
That's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
Right. And
I didn't do that.
Okay.
I just said, oh, it's blue tape. I can just go zip all the way across here. And then it was like, there's a huge line right through the
Yeah, there is. I scribe, even if there's blue tape, I scribe into the wood.
Okay. That was my next question. Yeah. All right.
But to your point, if you're on the face, if I do have through mortise and tenon joinery, and I don't want a line all the way across, horizontally across that drawer side. And I don't mind little crosshairs at the corners of my mortises, but I don't like it super long or uneven. So so for there, it is sort of the Andrew Hunter trick where I will lay out one dimension of the tenons in pencil and use that as a start and stop line for my marking gauge. And then once those are scribed, then you use those as your start and stop for the perpendicular knife lines or marking gauge lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same thing.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that about does it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my random recommendation of the week is to just start following more local woodworkers, not just the people, the stars. It's really interesting. I'm enjoying watching people around me, doing their woodworking and knowing that they're a stone's throw away, and
cool.
Being able to reach out and say, hey, if you need this, come on over and borrow it or something, so that's my recommendation. Stop just following huge accounts. But
100-Foot Wave on HBO.
What is that?
It's a documentary series on how surfers discovered the waves at Nazaré, Portugal, which is this insane break by this lighthouse where they have these 60 and 80 foot high waves. And it's a really funky, dangerous place, but it sort of covers the group of surfers who sort of pioneered surfing there.
Cool.
And it's like frightening. I mean, I spent some time surfing in my youth in California. And one of like my continuing nightmares is like having this giant wave come up ahead of you and you don't know whether to paddle out or give up and just like dive. But this brought back every, nightmare of trying to surf in big surf. And I was not good at all. But every now and then you find yourself out in waves bigger than you probably should have been. And it just like hits all those buttons, but it's very fascinating.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that does it for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Again, please send in your favorite segments throughout the years to shoptalk@taunton.com, along with any of your questions, of course. And if you send in your favorite segments by the 18th, please include your address, and I will send you out stickers as a way of saying thank you. If you're listening on YouTube, please click that thumbs up. And y'all, don't forget, iTunes reviews really, really do help. I had somebody mention it to us the other day that they found us because of the reviews on iTunes. It helps spread the word. Spreading the word helps pays the bills. Thanks for listening. Be on the lookout Friday for a special episode. And in 2 weeks, we'll have a best of episode. Thanks.
They can make anything you want to make.
Can we get the dishes?
Yeah. Hold on a sec. Hey, Rachel. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, man.
That's the outro, Rachel. Hey, Shop Talk Live listeners. Take a deeper dive into woodworking topics you love when you join the Fine Woodworking Unlimited community. From in-depth video workshops, projects and plans, tips and techniques, you'll find everything you need to know to master your craft. Try Unlimited now and enjoy a 14-day free trial. Find out more at finewoodworking.com/members.